Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ernie De Los Santos, founder and faculty chair at Appeal Academy and the creator of Finally Friday Live. And I do want to thank you for choosing to join us on this April 3rd, 2020 edition of Finally Friday. Today's Finally Friday broadcast is brought to you by our broadcast sponsors. They are the ones who provide financial support to make sure these shows stay free for you. They are the Health Law Partners, law firm out of Michigan and nationwide. We have Ensemble Health Partners. They are a very technology-savvy company offering a lot of revenue cycle tools and physician advisors. Also, Day Gaskiza's AR systems. She provides an awful lot of education all around the country. And Mary Gregory's MAS Coding Solutions, who provides an awful lot of coding education nationwide. And we also have our broadcast partners who provide content and speakers for free. That's Recovery Analytics. That's Sharon Easterling's company. CCMA, Council for Certification of Medical Auditors. That is Bill Malm is the president and chairman of the board of that company. Phoenix Medical Management is Stephanie Daniels' company. They are specialists in UR and case management. And then we also have Glenn Krause's company, Core CDI, who's looking to transform the CDI industry. Okay, so today, let me find, where's all this other stuff I had to say? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, anyway, so we're talking today. We're going to go over a new article that came out that was put together by NAHRI or NARI. It speaks to how you can.
Hi, Ernie. Can you hear me?
Yes. Who is that? Maria. Oh, you're back. Okay. Okay. So the article that we're going over is, I'd say you even should figure out how to write and submit your own comments for all the new proposed and interim final rules that have been coming out lately from CMS. And as you know, there's been a slew of them, so this is a very timely thing to be thinking about, even during the coronavirus emergency. And then we're going to hear from an emergency room chief physician and a nurse who she and her husband both contracted and later recovered from the coronavirus, and she wants to share her experiences with others who may already or may soon go through the same thing. She wants to offer hope and support for anyone who does. And finally, make sure you stick around for this. This didn't show up on the slides or anything because I got approval just in the last hour to be able to share it with you. I'm going to show you a new tool that uses artificial intelligence from IBM's Watson. I think everybody's aware of that tool. It uses Watson to locate and give you the documents that you're searching for any topic related to CMS rules and regulations. And the really cool thing about that tool, it's free. So any of you can use it all you want. So make sure you stick around to see it, and I'll not only show you how to get to it, I'll show you what it does as well. And I have Dr. Deepak Bahuja will be joining us, and he'll be able to tell us a little bit more about it. Okay, so as I said, Terry Rinker was a co-author of this article. She was called away to a COVID-19 meeting, go figure. Denise Williams is here with us, along with Dr. David Ledrick and Sandy Sheets, the nurse I was talking about, who is a COVID-19 survivor. Then we also have with us Dr. Maria Johar. She's a physician advisor for Ensemble Health Partners out of Ohio. Dr. Kit Trin, he's also in Ohio. He is the chief clinical officer and a physician advisor for Ensemble. He is going to be sharing some experiences about telehealth and COVID-19. Sharon Easterling is here. It's her birthday today. I think she's, 29 today. So we're always happy to have her with us. Happy birthday, Sharon. Bill Malm is able to join us today, and as I said, he's the president of the Council for Certification of Medical Auditors, and I believe he also has some experiences to share about COVID-19. Stephanie Daniels is usually hanging around in the chat room, so we'll see if she can join us today. Okay, now let me see what's going on in the chat room. If you don't know, let's see. Is my volume a little low? Maria, you were saying?
It seems so. If you can make it a little bit higher, that would be great.
Okay, let me see what I can do about that. Okay. Okay, so, the disclaimer I always give for a show, I do want to make clear that the opinions shared in the show are those of our guest speakers and panelists. They're not necessarily representative of their employers. My opinions, of course, are only my own and no one else's, and they're especially not those of our sponsors. All the images I use, the PowerPoint decks, are selected by me. I do hope you can enjoy my sense of humor, despite the serious nature of the content we are providing. Finally, we offer these shows for educational purposes only. We're certainly not offering legal advice. But we do our best to provide you with great, accurate, and conservatively considered education for free, and at least point you in the direction of solutions. Okay, so let me I've got a couple of slides that I wanted to talk about before we get going. This was a slide I had up 2 weeks ago because I thought it was a very good article that was done by Tom Frieden. He's the former head of the CDC, and he gave some very sobering figures, which you can see in that chart on the bottom. I also saw that those kind of numbers being used on CNN quite a bit, but that was 2 weeks ago. And then I also pulled up this chart, or this page. There's a link to it. Everybody's going to be able to watch this show for free, and you're going to get the deck for free because this stuff is just so important. I'm not going to put it behind my membership. So anyway, you'll get the links to it, and you'll find out how to get to this site yourself, which is done by Johns Hopkins. Now, I want you to notice this was 2 weeks ago. Notice what the map looks like. Notice what the numbers look like. And then let me show you what that same thing looked like yesterday. Quite a bit of difference. Of course, we all know that, but it's kind of interesting to see it in a graphic format. Okay, and then one more is I just zoomed in. I used that same thing, and I zoomed in on the U.S. map. Doesn't look quite as bad when you zoom in, but still, that's a pretty bad map to be able to see. And then the numbers that are associated with it, I pulled those out separately. Again, you're all going to be able to get a copy of this. So again, the 2 week difference between 320 and 42, you can see those numbers changed quite a bit. And then as well, I noticed this, that the deaths from COVID-19 in the U.S. are doubling every 3 days. I just let that soak in a little bit. That was kind of alarming to me. I thought the number of cases would double. It was showing it was going to double every 3 days, but even with that flattening a little, the number of deaths is doubling every 3 days in the U.S. I didn't do any numbers on the rest of those countries, but that's pretty amazing for what's happening here. All right, so as you know, there were a lot of new rules that came out to give you relaxation on a lot of the regulations, and I thought this was an especially astute time to have this kind of an article. It came out, it was put out by NARI, National Association of Healthcare Revenue Integrity. This is a little bit about them. You go to their site and you can join them for a pretty reasonable amount if you want to be able to get access to all of their resources. They're not a sponsor. I'm just doing this because I think this is terrific stuff they put out. Okay, and then this article is available as a PDF for free on their website. You can go there and find a copy of it for yourself, or when you get to the recording that I will put up on myfinallyfriday.com, I'll have a copy of the article in there. But you can go download it right now if you want. So this is the article that Terry Rinker and Denise Williams wrote, and then they gave me, I asked them to give us some high points that they wanted to talk about, and these were what they came up with. So Denise, these are going to be your bullets here. So I kind of reworded them a little bit from what you wrote, but I thought this was why reading a summary is not really enough, right? You need to read the whole
right.
thing. Yeah. And then how
right.
and why you should comment, and then the best way to do that. And so we're going to go through that. So Denise, you got any opening remarks you want to say here before I move on in the slides?
The only thing is when you think about this, it can get a little overwhelming. So you just have to think about that adage of how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. And so that's what we've tried to do here with this article.
Okay. All right, great. And so the first point is about why you need to read the whole thing and why reading a summary is not enough. This is a little-known ICD-10 code that Ron Hirsch found for me a couple of years ago.
And I have to say, I saw your sense of humor in that when I read it.
Okay.
So part of what we want to for providers to understand is that it's fine to read a summary. We're not saying that summaries are a bad thing, but when you have something in a rule that is specifically applicable to what you do on a day-to-day basis, you want to go to that proposed rule for yourself and see what the details are. Because someone on the front lines of how hospitals operate day to day, whether it be registration, whether it be revenue integrity, whether it be clinical, there's going to be something in the language of the rule that will stand out to certain people that doesn't stand out to others because it's not part of your everyday world. The summaries don't typically hit on that.
Yeah, I can see that very easily that could happen. But of course, I know when I read the darn things, I get nothing out of them compared to when Sharon reads them or Bill reads them. They're the ones I rely on usually to go read those things and give us summaries about them. But totally agree with that. You should read it yourself. Okay, second point you were making is why you should be doing, folks who are on the call today, you should be doing this kind of reading and then commenting because you are the ones CMS wants to hear from, even if you've been in revenue cycle.
And Ernie, I wanted to point out to Denise's comment, I frequently hear people that read third-party vendor summaries and come up with it. It is very important you always stick with the source authority when making these comments because third-party vendor summaries are really usually not going to be used in this type of commenting unless it is attached to some sort of data that can be vetted. So read the original rule as your source authority.
Very good point, Bill. And I know that when you do summaries for us, I know we've got on your slides, you've got the real language listed. So that's not going to be too big of a problem there. But still, people should read the whole thing themselves. So Denise, tell us why do you think people should be doing this and making their points known?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first one is because your perspective is the one that counts. It counts to CMS. It counts to the people who are on the CMS staff who are writing the final rules and taking, you always hear them say they're going to take it under consideration. They truly do. There are providers who have gone back to and reading the final rule based on what they commented on the proposed rule, and they can tell where CMS actually took their ideas because the language is so close to what was provided in their response. And the people on the front line are the ones who know how, if there's going to be a new requirement for something that has to be captured, data has to be captured or commented on in a report type of format outside the rule, then it's the people on the front line who know how that affects their daily work. And CMS has a new program out there that they refer to as patients over paperwork. So if we can provide to CMS that this does not put patients before paperwork, and here are the reasons why, they really will listen. And also, you're the ones on the front line who can give them ideas of how can you get this information but not make my job harder? How can we work smarter but not harder? And you don't have to be an expert, and you don't have to comment on everything in the proposed rule. You can find the section or sections that apply to you. Typically, there's a table of contents, or the first several pages of the rule provide a summary, so you know what pieces you want to look at, and target in on those particular pieces. It doesn't have to be a global comment. It's better if it's a very specific comment, and it's better if it's not a form letter. After they see the fourth or fifth form letter, they kind of don't pay attention to those anymore. They really want to know that perspective and that individual's point of view.
And you can submit more than one comment. You don't have to put them all in one submission, do you?
Absolutely. You can post it in as many segments as you want to. That's a great point. Okay. Because the other big piece is you want to be sure you get your comment or comments in before the deadline. Because if they're after the deadline that's set, then they don't get considered. So it is much better to put in your comments in small sections. Especially if you're through with that one particular topic, go ahead and submit it and then go on to the next one.
Okay. All right. Interesting. But I do think it's important that people understand that, writing things, with your perspective, that's why they want the comments. And you've all got to realize CMS is not that much out in the field. These people, they're bureaucrats. And while some of them have a fair amount of experience, they're not necessarily out in the field, and certainly not the way any of you are. So they need your input and your perspectives. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say absolutely, because when we go to some of the meetings where they do presentations on some of the proposed rules, especially the outpatient rule, you can see some of the members of CMS's eyes glaze over a little bit. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but they're not understanding exactly what we're talking about from an operational perspective. So that in what we call the real provider world. So it's extremely important.
I think
to that
also,
point, Ernie,
ahead,
you have
Bill.
to remember CMS are lawyers. So they're not likely to always understand operations. So it's very helpful if you can give examples, be very clear about it. And I always have somebody else read what I wrote and see if they understand it. But remember, you're not dealing generally with people that have a lot of hospital operations experience. So Denise's point is very well taken.
I think also it's something that I learned long ago hearing, I forget which politician it was I was talking to, but if you're going to talk to the government or a congressman or even just CMS, what you want to do is not just be complaining about something and you think this is a bad idea. You need to be able to offer some kind of alternative. It's just like what Denise was saying a few minutes ago. Give them an idea of how to get that same information without complicating your life. That's the best way to see some changes happen. So this slide, we're talking about how to draft your comments before you send them out, and I think Bill just did some of that. But Denise, talk about this.
One of the ways I look at this is I find it for myself that as I read the rule, I start doing what I call a brain dump. As I read something that hits me, I'll make my notes about it. And then I'll leave it alone after I get through with that section. I'll put it aside for a little while and then come back to it and actually take that brain dump, if you will, and edit it down to what I really want CMS to understand. What are the most important pieces of that, and then draft a copy prior to submitting it. Again, then after I draft it again, I'll leave it and come back to it a little bit later and read it again. Because we all know after you look at something for a while and your initial thoughts are extremely important, but then we want to kind of pull it all together. It does not have to be page after page after page. You don't have to, they're interested in the quality of what you have to tell them, not the quantity of words that you use. So just put it in your own words. Talk to them about your own experiences and you know, you want to keep that short, but you want to give them some details. And then if you've got a better solution for them, or if their proposal is just not going to give them the information that they're really looking for, tell them that. Tell them why. And then if you know of a better reason or a better way to get it, then offer that to them as well. Because that, again, as Bill said, they don't understand what goes on inside a hospital. And who better to tell them? And again, the good part is they are listening to what providers tell them. And if you think about it, if that's your comment, that's from your experience, chances are it's from a lot of other people's experience across the country. Because while we're a little different, in a lot of ways we're all the same. And the more people who on the front lines from all over the country can give them that perspective, the more they'll listen to it. And they have come back and said, you know, after hearing from commenters, we've decided that we're going to delay this proposal and do some more research on it. Or, and it's fine to put their own words in there. Many times, providers will say, CMS notes in the proposed rule and put in 2 or 3 lines verbatim for the proposed rule. And that's helpful because then CMS knows exactly which part of their rule you were looking at. Because it's as many pages for them as it is for us to get through, right? And they get comments from all over the country. We want to, of course, for them to get more than what they're getting, especially from providers. But be sure it's in your own words, based on your own experiences. Don't worry about, you know, the language that's used in the rule as far as do you have to use some of those words? No, not unless you're quoting it as from what CMS said. But put it in your own words and tell them what the impact is going to be.
Denise, I have a question. Is it helpful, if it's in the Federal Register, to give them the page and the paragraph number that you're referring to?
It is very helpful to give them the page number, but I wouldn't, if you don't, they still are able to find it, because when you submit it on their website, you can submit it with the title of the section of the rule. So, for instance, if it's section Roman numerals 2 that say therapy services, you can make that the header of your comment as you file it, and they will know it goes with that section of the rule.
Okay.
And part of that reason is because it is in the Federal Register, but they also have a CMS copy. And so some people start reading this when the CMS copy gets published. Others wait until it's the final rule, and the page numbers are not the same.
Oh, well, that's a little confusing. Is there a real difference between what gets, because I know I've seen that sometimes where it says, oh, this is it says it's not published yet, and yet I find it on the Federal Register. What's the one you should use?
You can use either. They are exactly the same documents. The only difference is that the time frame for when the comment period starts is based on when CMS publishes it on their website. So typically, for an OPPS or an IPPS, inpatient prospective payment system and outpatient cycle, they will start the comment period from the time they post it on CMS's website. The only difference when it gets to the Federal Register is it's not double-spaced, it's a lot smaller type, and it fits within the Federal Register's format. But it's exactly the same information. And if you have nothing else to do one night and you're having trouble sleeping, you could go through and kind of read both of them and compare them. But they really are the same. It will cure your insomnia if you want to do that.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Denise, I think that's a great article. Certainly want to encourage everybody to go out and take a look at that. Anybody who has questions about any of that, you can submit them in the Q&A box or in the chat room, which is in your control bar. I'm going to move on, though, to talk to our physicians. Our ER doctor and our nurse, Sally. But I wanted to, because I've been watching this kind of stuff that's been going on in Ohio for a while, because some of the first places I saw that were doing testing, they were showing up in Ohio. At least those are the ones I was seeing. And maybe that's just because I know a bunch of people in Ohio. But anyway, this was an article I found about that. This is what the drive-through testing looked like at that time. But I wanted to get over and let Dr. Johar, I think you were going to lead this part of the discussion in talking with Dr. Ledrick and with Sandy. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you. I couldn't find a picture of anybody from Ohio in an emergency room, but that's closest I got to that. But anyway, so Dr. Johar, please.
Can you hear me, Ernie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to thank Dr. David Ledrick and our nurse survivor, Sandy Sheets, for joining us today. I'm going to start with Dr. David Ledrick. He is our physician in the ED, and him and his team are working tirelessly every day and have been through the beginning of this COVID virus that has attacked our state and our country. So I'm going to start with Dr. Ledrick. Would you be kind enough to share with us the journey, when it started, how you were staffed, and what kind of precautions you were taking, and now, how you are seeing the volumes maybe in the hospital, and what kind of protection you are taking for yourself and your staff today?
Okay. What's ironic actually is that our volumes have been down in the emergency department. Most of the things we've been doing have been trying to prepare for the onslaught, but it's kind of like the calm before the storm at the moment. We did a number of things with our residency. For instance, we pulled our residents off the off services so we could have additional staffing in the department from a resident standpoint. But with the volumes down, we're actually having to pull attendings off shifts and go to a call system for the moment, just in terms of trying to keep exposures down for a little bit. One thing that we are doing is that we are not allowing the interns into the COVID rooms. So if we kind of do an initial screen effectively from the doorway with PPE on, which actually slows out all the processes down because of the donning and doffing and doing it properly. But if there's a suspected COVID, we actually pull the interns off and it becomes a upper level resident or attending only case. This is even extended into our educational bits. Like we're no longer doing our grand rounds. We're doing everything electronically, much like this, which is kind of cool because programs around the country have collaborated. And for instance, this past Wednesday, we attended the Baltimore grand rounds at the University of Maryland. But anyway, what we do is we really have to pay attention to all patients. It said that we're trying, for instance, to change our trauma rooms over to negative pressure rooms. as opposed to the positive pressure rooms that they were. But we've come up with some inventive ways of checking on our patients. For instance, rather than going into a patient room 2 or 3 times, you'll go in once, do a good exam with your PPE on, and then you'll actually call the patient on the phone that's in their room. So you can check on them, update them, and do that somewhat remotely with less direct intervention. So I think the place where we really have had to pay the most attention to things are the patients we're intubating. So we have a couple rooms designated. Room 18 and 19 are our negative pressure rooms, and we've really changed the way we've done intubations in terms of the people that are in the room. We're minimizing the number of people that go into the room. We're using video laryngoscopy. We're not using non-invasive ventilation because that aerosolizes things. We also have had even some discussions as to the ethics of resuscitation of a COVID patient. We had an ethicist do rounding the other day, just thinking about if somebody is coding and they're coding because they're COVID positive, what's their survivability and what's the chance of infecting other healthcare workers with that? So I guess that's kind of a rambling but complete-ish kind of summary of what we're doing.
No, thank you so much, David. We appreciate you. And when everyone else has been told to stay at home, you and your team are at the front lines. We are very grateful that you are there to take care of us, our communities, and we want you to stay safe. So we really appreciate you taking care of our patients and then sharing some of your experiences with us today. I want to bring in now Sandy Sheets. She is a nurse of more than 40 years. She is an astute auditor and a wonderful appeals nurse. And you will see after she presents why she is a fabulous person to get onto this call, because she's a survivor of COVID, her husband and herself. But the meticulous ways that she can give you the day-by-day information is why she is a wonderful person to share her experience. So, Sandy, can you help us understand how you figured out that you had the COVID and what happened while you were sick, what kind of resources you had and were trying to get, and how you managed to recover with all the help, around, and as well as where you are today. So back to you, Sandy.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. I'll be happy to share our journey, as now being on the other side of this, we, my husband and myself, would like to give back as much as possible. So our journey basically started on March 5th. To March 8th, we went to Vegas to celebrate our son's 30th birthday. There were 11 people in our group that traveled from Colorado, Florida, Ohio, all going to Las Vegas for this birthday celebration. None of the others in our group got sick. We flew home and landed in Detroit on March 8th, and March 9th, we always take a day off to rest up before we go back to work. We were home and well. My husband went to work on March 10th, and when he came home, he was complaining of a sore throat, and even that he had glass in his throat, and he had a dry cough. Now, they did have them tearing out insulation from a ceiling, so he was kind of thinking it could be due to some of the insulation fibers. The following day, March 11th, he woke up with extreme muscle and body aches, headache, dry cough, sore throat, and malaise. He called off sick, and he slept for about 20 hours out of 24. On March 12th and 13th, he had the same symptoms, but he also had some nausea develop. He did not develop a fever until Saturday, March 14th. At that point, it started at 101.5 to 103. Being a nurse for many years, the 101.5 was one thing. I gave him the Tylenol, but then a few hours later it was up to 103. So, hey, we always learned alternate Motrin or ibuprofen. So I started doing that. On March 15th, same thing, elevated temp 101 to 103, alternating the Tylenol and the Motrin. At that point, I was really feeling strongly that he had COVID. So I called on the local news channels. They were giving a Mercy hotline and a ProMedica hotline, and I called them, and because he wasn't short of breath, he was not eligible to be tested. They also had a CDC hotline number and a Wood County Health Department number, and I reached out to them as well. 2 different times I left voicemail message on the CDC hotline and never did get a call back, or from the Wood County Health Department. So his temperature continued on March 16th. His max was 103.5, but I quit giving him Motrin because he was saying that they didn't help, and they really didn't. I was tracking his temps probably 20 times a day, if not more, and the Motrin never did seem to help bring his fever down. And then the World Health Organization came out with the announcement that they felt that ibuprofen actually fed COVID and enhanced the virus. So for those 2 reasons, we definitely quit giving the COVID. Now, interestingly enough, my husband has been on Celebrex for years, but when this first started and he got ill about March 11th, taking pills would almost make him want to gag. So I only gave him his blood pressure medication, and I did start monitoring his blood pressure. So through day 4 of the fever, then his blood pressure, he about became hypotensive with no blood pressure medication. He was running about 110 over 70, and for him, that is hypotensive. So I held his losartan, and I had been communicating with his physician, and after 4 days of the 103 fever, he was convinced that he had some kind of an infection going on. So we went to a local clinic, ProMedica clinic, and he had a chest x-ray, some lab work, and they did an influenza A and B swab. So his chest x-ray was beautiful, thank the Lord above, and his influenza swabs were negative. Interestingly enough, his white count was low at 3.5, and his platelets were low at 207. On March 18th, he still had a fever of 103. We were managing with Tylenol, and he started to develop what he called a severe ice pick headache, where it just felt like somebody was stabbing his head with an ice pick. And he'd be dozing on the couch, and all of a sudden his whole body would jerk. And then he'd wake up, and it would be one of those ice pick type of headache responses. We also had a town hall meeting with Bob Latta and Dr. James from Tennessee that I participated in one night because I was extremely frustrated as I tried 4 times to get him tested, knowing that that one day he worked, he exposed coworkers. So we did find out on the 17th that 4 other coworkers he worked with were off work with a fever. On March 19th, we received a call from the Wood County Health Department informing us that one of my husband's coworkers did test positive for COVID. He apparently was taken by rescue squad from the physician's office to a hospital and ended up on a ventilator. So through interviewing me, they decided that my husband was probably the point of contact because he was the first one that was ill. On the 19th, Okay, so we definitely have been on confinement, relying on neighbors to bring us Gatorade because we were notified that his sodium and potassium were low from the blood work that he had. And in hindsight, with those high fevers, I was just making him drink water. Every time he'd wake up, I'd make him down a bottle of water, and not even thinking at the time that I'd be depleting him even more of electrolytes. So we did start taking the Gatorade on the 19th, still had a fever of 103 after 1 hour after Tylenol. So we're trying to go to bed at 10 o'clock. His temp's 103. I knew I couldn't supplement with ibuprofen anymore, so I had him laying in bed with the ceiling fan on, cold presses on his neck, his head, his armpits, his groin for 3 hours. I felt that night we were going to the ER or he was going to the morgue because he was sick. I was never so scared in my life. March 20th, the one tip that we did get from Dr. James on the town hall meeting was that he suggested for us to try hot steam showers and hot vapor, like boiling water and trying to breathe it in, that there was thought that COVID didn't like that. So we started hot showering and breathing in some hot vapors. On the evening of the 19th, I was also advised to start taking some high-dose zinc. Now, he hadn't been eating too much and still didn't have appetite, taste, or smell, but we started 100 milligram zinc twice a day, and then we were taking a 50 at lunch. And then, interestingly enough, 24 hours later, on March 20th, his temp max was 101. On March 21st, he woke up early in the morning in a diffuse sweat. I could have wrung sweat out of our sheets. I mean, I've had seen many a fever break in my day, but never to the extreme that this was. It was just saturated. And at that point, his temp max on the 21st was 99.3. But the ice pick headaches were still relentless. They just continued. We switched from regular strength Tylenol because I could give that more often, and that was helping the fever most of the time, except for that one Thursday night. And we switched to the extra strength Tylenol because that was the only thing that was touching those severe headaches. On the 22nd, he had another episode of a massive sweat. On the 23rd, he continued with a severe headache, and we did the extra strength Tylenol every 5 to 6 hours. On the 24th, his headache finally started subsiding. On the 25th, no headache, no temp. On the 26th, his appetite, smell, and taste started to come back. On the 27th, he had another body sweat, but it wasn't as bad, and there was no temp and no Tylenol that had precipitated any sweating. He was down a total of 15 pounds in that period of time, and he was released to go back to work, even though he works for the city of Perrysburg, even though they ended up telling all non-essential employees to stay home. I'm assuming especially because most of the gentlemen that worked with him that day, they pretty much contaminated a building. My symptoms were much milder, praise God, because I don't know how I would have taken care of both of us if I would have gotten as sick as he did. Mine did not start until, actually, March 13th. I had some pre-op testing done for what was canceled. I started on the 16th with a slight head cold and chest congestion symptoms. On the 17th, kind of got a raspy voice with the head and chest cold symptoms. And the 18th, same thing. But I did develop on the 18th a dry cough. I did not have a fever. I did have some sweating. I had no appetite, no taste, no smell. Then, let's see.
Sandy?
Yes.
You have given us a wonderful window of what happened during those days. Mm-hmm. Today, thankfully, you and your husband are doing well.
Yes.
And I know that you have reached out to help other people by sharing your story to
yes.
say that, you can turn it around. It does work. You can recover out of this. I know that at this present time, you are looking to maybe donating some of your, to do a transfusion, plasma, anything at all from your perspective that you have gotten any information on that, on when you can do this, and where are you with that?
Well, so I'm being told that because we have not had a formal positive COVID test, we have to wait for the finger stick test that Dr. Acton in Ohio has been announcing the last couple days during their daily briefings that is in the process of being developed. And at that point, we could be tested that we have antibodies, and then we would be able to donate our plasma to others that were being trialed at the front line. I know they were doing it in New York City for 19 patients. I have not heard the outcome of that trial that they were doing, but we definitely want to give back.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I wanted to share with the audience today that we have Dr. David Ledrick, one of our ER physicians who's on the front lines every day, taking care of patients, making sure that him and his staff are safe. And then we also have Sandy Sheets, who went through this disease, with her husband, and is now on the other side of it, and is absolutely willing to help others by donating not only her plasma, but also her story of what she went through. Remember that when Sandy got sick, COVID was not yet being treated the way it is today. This is a rapidly evolving situation. However, we, as in the healthcare system today, we are asking all patients to not go to the hospital right away if they have any kind of symptoms. Mercy Bon Secours Health has actually a COVID e-visit. And we actually have one of our sponsors, Dr. Trin, who's on the line today with us, who is providing televisits. So Dr. Trin, if you are online, maybe you can share your experience with us, because we do want to protect all our staff and other patients.
Thank you, Dr. Johar. Right, so, about 4 shifts a month. I try to do 4 shifts a month on the weekends, seeing patients via telemedicine. Certainly nothing new. I've been doing it for years, keep my license active. But what I've noticed is, as you alluded to, probably about 5 weeks ago, started getting an influx of potential, what we call it, COVID-like illness. And what's interesting is, when it first hit us, the questions we were asking focused a lot around, have you been to China in the past 14 days? Have you been outside of the U.S. in the past 14 days? At this point, we don't even ask those questions anymore, because the U.S. actually has the most questions, has the most cases. So it's interesting, to your point, Maria, the evolution, that we don't worry about the travel so much anymore. I would say that with telemedicine, the vast majority of people who are calling in are what I would call the worried well. A nice proportion of them don't even have any symptoms at all. They just call because they heard that their girlfriend's uncle may be positive, and so now they're kind of freaking out at home. And that was a real case I had over the weekend, a gentleman who said, oh my gosh, my girlfriend, somebody, another. And so, a lot of this is anxiety, Maria. I've never seen so many e-visits for anxiety purposes. So our screening questions, like I said, no longer focuses on the travel. What it focuses on right now is the duration of symptoms. Is there a fever, which we define as 100.4 or greater? We look for shortness of breath, kind of what Sandy was talking about with the cough, the sore throat, and the loss of taste and smell. And then everybody seems to want to get tested now. And obviously, at this point, we still don't have enough testing kits. So the people I do refer for testing have to have what we call CF, which is complicating factors. Are you a healthcare provider? Do you have chronic illness, which is including asthma, COPD, emphysema, heart disease, uncontrolled diabetes, cancer? We ask, are you pregnant? Are you greater than 65? Or do you live in a household with someone greater than 65? So I take those risk factors that I just shared. If you check off one of those boxes, you are now known as having potential complicating factor. Those people move to the head of the line for testing, right? They're worried, we don't test them. And so a lot of time people also get confused about, hey, I heard about quarantine. Is it 7 days? Is it 14 days? Because the vast majority of patients, we just recommend self-quarantine. And I would say this includes people in nursing homes. As you know, you and I had conversations about nursing homes being on heightened alert and not wanting to take people back until test results come back. But that has caused an incredible throughput issue. So, certainly if you have symptoms and you have been potentially exposed, we give you the minimum 7-day self-quarantine and 3 days without symptoms speech. If you have absolutely no symptoms whatsoever, but you're just afraid that your girlfriend's uncle has tested positive, then we give you the 14-day self-quarantine, because by then we believe the incubation period should have passed. And if you're not showing symptoms after 14 days, you got a good bill of health. But so by doing what we do in the telemedicine world, we have saved, oh my gosh, Maria, I probably see at least 80 to 100 patients on a weekend. If I decide to do a weekend, I can easily see that many patients. But it makes me feel good that those people did not show up at the ER. They did not show up to a doctor's office where they could potentially infect others. And the vast majority of them are worried wells. And after I talk to them and I reassure them, the relief, you could just see their face, the relief there. And so we do definitely have the ability to send out for referrals, but I look for those the complicating factors that I shared earlier. But I think it's a great resource, and telehealth has taken on a life of its own. Now that Medicare reimburses, everybody's reimbursing for it. I just think it's a wonderful platform. Thanks.
So thank you, Dr. Trin, for sharing this opportunity with our audience today, because we are protecting the patients that you see on telemedicine. Not only are they relieved, but if they had not exercised this option, they would go to the urgent care or their doctor's office and maybe get exposed, one, if they didn't have it, or give it to somebody if they were already positive. So in both instances, I think this telemedicine is truly an opportunity to improve healthcare, and we also want to make sure that we are protecting doctors in the ED like Dr. Ledrick. These are our heroes who are actually on the front line, so we really, really very much appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So back to Ernie, I think you have another wonderful resource that you're going to share with the audience today.
Right. There's the new tool, and I'm going to have Dr. Deepak Pahuja come on and talk about it here in a minute. This is, we may go a couple minutes over, gang, but I think we can get this out before the top of the hour. This is Dr. Pahuja's company, which is based out of the Dallas area, aerolib.com. If you go to their site, you can find let me see if I can get my tool to work here. You can get whoops. Okay, well, if you go to, if I can get the slides to work correctly, right up here at the top of their website is a link called Cerebral. And if you click on that, you then come to a page that looks like this, and it basically explains it. It's make it very clear this is not providing medical advice, but it is using IBM's Watson to find a lot of documents for you. And I'm going to let Dr. Pahuja talk about that in just a moment. But basically, when you go there, you scroll down the page, and there's just a login. So you need to put your email, first, last name, and company. That's it. It will then allow you to log into the tool, and you can use it freely. So, Dr. Pahuja, why don't you tell us a little bit about it while I bring up that tool so everybody can see it.
Okay, thanks, Ernie, and thanks to all the team who've spoken today. Just wonderful listening to everyone, some at the front end and some at the back end. Aerolib's little effort to allow streamlining of rules, regulations, search for all hospitals is the result of what you see, the Cerebral. We are now partnered with IBM Watson and Discovery to get almost 4,000 documents on an easy searchable basis for this. It's free to use, and what it does is it scans on, it learns from what you ask. So, Ernie, you're doing a live demo. Say, click on the blue Watson tab and type in telemedicine and COVID, and it should bring up some of the latest regulations that are out there that have been released. And then if you click on them, it'll give you some billings and whatever's new on it. The tool is designed for Medicare claims processing manual, as well as the ton of regulations released by CMS in just the last 10 days. So Kiet, I know you're doing a lot of telemedicine, but if you were to check on either use the Cerebral browser or your own PDF, it should give you new stuff, and it learns from questions. It learns from what the right answers are. These are all curated answers. But again, this is just our little effort for systems to use this.
This is great. Yeah, anybody can use it. I highly encourage you folks to go give it a look, as it shows you can, when it finds something, you can open it either in the Cerebral browser, and that brings it up right there. And then, of course, you've got the ability you can download or print, anything that it finds that way. And then you can also tell it to open it in a new tab, so it's in your browser rather than in Cerebral, and that way you can bookmark it and save it right there very easily. So
right, our effort this time has been just focused on CMS documents, CDC documents, and Medicare manuals for right now. Again, we want to keep it as I think one of the speakers had mentioned, on citations on what you need to use, when you need to use. We're still getting a lot of hospitals that are not getting COVID-19 denials, but are getting length of stay denials on COVID-19 patients. So I think the effort from this group is not for them, is to still find out and refer to these documents when we are writing up appeals. I think the last uploaded document was from April 1st, and yesterday there were some new ones released by CMS. We'll add them by the end of the day today.
This is just really, this is what AI should be used for, and it's what. So hats off to you, Dr. Pahuja, and your team for putting this together. I think this is a fantastic resource for people to use. And again, unlike some companies I'm seeing out there, if they're offering this for free, and it's an effort to help not only their clients, but the rest of us as well. So this is really fantastic. But again, thank you, Dr. Pahuja, and thank you for letting me tell everybody about it today.
No worries.
So, well, that's all the time we've got. I have, again, in the deck here some other links to things that I suppose you can find in Cerebral, but I left them up here on the slides anyway, so that you can go access them. And I just wanted to say to everybody here, it's a good idea for you to do this on any kind of a talk or a webinar or anything. Write down right now, when you're done, write down what it is, the biggest thing that you learned out of our show here today. You should do this with everything. If you think about it, this is what happens, how you determine whether or not you like the movie or not. When you walk out of the theater, what is it that you remember about it? That's the thing that's going to you're going to remember that, and you're going to determine whether you like the movie or not. Well, same thing with these webinars. So any course you take or whatever, because write it down, write it in the chat box if you get a chance, if you want to. I always enjoy the encouragement to know you got something out of it, because I don't want you to feel like that gal shown there where she's just wondering, what was that about? I want you to feel like this. I want you to feel like you actually got something out of the show today, and just write it down for yourself. If you write it down, that'll help you as well. Oh, and okay, yeah, I do see Dr. Pahuja put in the link for aerolib.com is how you find the Cerebral browser, and that'll be easy for you to find. Aerolib.com, AEROLIB.com. And if you can't figure it out, well, write to me, and I'll make sure you get connected to it, okay? So please keep in mind, you're all my heroes. You're heroes whether you're my hero or not. You're all of you who are working in a hospital, even if you're not working clinically with people, you support hospital and the providers, the physicians and the nurses like we've had on the show today. They're the ones who are helping patients directly, but anything you do in the hospital, even if you're a janitor, you're my heroes. You're the ones making all that possible. So keep calm, carry on, and, we will defeat this thing. So thanks, everyone, for being with us today. I appreciate all of our sponsors, whether you're a broadcast sponsor or a broadcast partner. Thanks very much. And, watch for our emails about the upcoming shows. We'll probably be talking about COVID-19 for a while to come. But share the links to your show with your colleagues and friends, and we'll see you on our next show when it's finally Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you all, and bye-bye.